And I am so excited to welcome our community partners up here to have a conversation based on this and this whole experience of how do we support our families and community members. So I will introduce you guys and you can come up, I guess. So we have Michelle Rivera from Progressing Latino. We have Jesus Ayala Figueroa from the South Providence HES and Family Service of Rhode Island. We have Liz Morera from the Pawtucket Central Falls HES. And then we have Dennis Gonzalez from the Central Providence HES and One Neighborhood Builders. So thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, so our first question for everyone is, can you tell us about the work that your organization does and how it is critical to addressing the root causes that are important to understanding healthy weight and healthy living in childhood? Michelle?
So Progreso Latino has a wide variety of programs. In relation to food and food insecurity, we have a food pantry that we open Wednesdays. We can only open it once a week, and we served about 250 plus people weekly just within those 3 hours that we're open. We do offer fresh vegetables and sometimes produce like milk and eggs. We also have health programs through our wellness department. One of them is called Sa Sa Sa, which stands for Salsa, Salud, and Sabor, which helps incorporate the recipes from multiple cultures and kind of puts a spin on them to make them healthy. So that's kind of like some of the programs we do in relation to food and food insecurity.
Hi, good morning. The South Providence has, and the work that we do around child obesity and this topic focuses more through the services of our community health workers. In the South Providence area, there's a lot of limitations around language and access because people do not know how to navigate the system. Even though the help is there, they don't know how to get to it. Or the fact that a lot of our families have to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. So even when those opportunities like food pantries are there, they're simply working during those hours. So our community health worker aids them in application process to SNAP, or it could be delivering food to a particular family that can't make it to during the hours of a particular food pantry. And of course, we try to integrate ourselves into major conversations to impact this issue at a root cause level, such as this opportunity that we're, participated through Rhode Island Kids Count. That's how I can summarize the work we do.
Great, thank you. Liz?
Thank you, Caitlin, and thank you, Rhode Island Kids Count, for the involvement of the HESs within this council and this initiative, because HESs are really place-based and resident-driven, and we have a lot of residents who are passionate and really understand the needs and the powerful storytelling that we get from our residents are impactful in really getting that qualitative perspective to the data that you look at every day. And a lot of times it helps you take a step back and understand, like, these are actual people and their stories really matter. So a lot of the work that we do through Pawtucket and Central Falls is one exciting process that we're in now is called participatory budgeting, where residents get to decide how to spend a portion of the public budget. And Pawtucket and Central Falls was awarded $385,000. And out of the 11 proposals, 5 or 6 of them contribute to these root causes, anything from improving the bike path that we have in Pawtucket and Central Falls, and improving the new Central Falls outdoor learning area, having food with friends where they can convene and learn how to make healthier meals. So these are all issues that residents see and want implemented in Pawtucket and Central Falls, and working with the community has been super impactful in the launch of our new food and nutrition task force. We've sought through social determinants of health screenings that our community health worker does. Food insecurity is always at the top of the list, and right next to housing, and it's something that we really try to get together with the community to see what is it that we have in Pawtucket and Central Falls. How can we create a baseline asset map so we can see how can we supplement what's already happening. Pawtucket and Central Falls has a lot of bodegas. How can we build up the bodegas to be able to offer fresh produce? And that's a lot of times it's just the infrastructure. They just need a fridge or they need a shelf. So those are things that we are constantly looking for funding opportunities to support and build local capacity.
Yeah, that was wonderful. So Central Providence Opportunity is the signature initiative for One Neighborhood Builders as the backbone health equity zone for Central Providence. So really our work is to strengthen partnerships with existing organizations that are doing really wonderful work within Central Providence, because we understand that we cannot eradicate everything just on our own. So we would rather take our what we've learned and what makes us experts and really feed into the local organizations that are doing some really wonderful work. So a lot of our help comes from the partners that are already doing the work, which is really awesome to lean into. Then we also deploy community health workers to be able to perform social determinants of health and really bridge the gap and bridge resources to the communities where they're most needed. A lot of our food insecurity stems from lack of knowledge that these supports actually already exist. But some of them are not culturally relevant, which is truly where we find ourselves at a roadblock, because a lot of what's accessible for food pantries aren't really ingredients or food that is naturally ingested. I'm Puerto Rican, so like usually beans, rice are a part of our diet. Fish, people think of Latin food and they immediately go to like poultry or pork or chicken, but we eat a lot of fish, but that's not really accessible in most places where families are needed. We are also part of the lead facilitators for SNAP Outreach, and we convene a group of other community organizers who want to promote the SNAP messaging, and part of our work is being able to tell DHS, hey, you know, you're not doing that great of a job at really reaching the people that you want to reach, and what's currently out there is not what our community actually needs. So a little bit of standing on the shoulders of people that are already doing amazing work, and then trying to do the best that we can with our community health workers, because community health workers rule the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you guys for those great answers and sharing with us what's going on in your community, in the community that you work in, and how, you know, addressing these root causes is really going to start to make a shift for families and kids in Rhode Island. So my next question is, was there a specific barrier or recommendation that was discussed during the community conversations that you want to share that really stood out to you or want to highlight? Michelle?
I work in policy, so I'm going to talk about the advocacy part and just allowing parents the opportunity to be part of the process. Because even though parents are busy, we found a lot of parents that were really invested and passionate about ensuring that their kids had access to healthy and nutritious meals in school and accessible to recreational spaces. So just giving them a seat at the table, communicating with them, improving the relationships between parents and the schools and the food vendors so that they have a say in what their children are consuming, because they want to be at the table. So we need to create those avenues for them to be more involved.
A comment that I heard recurrently during this exercise and in other meetings as well has been outreach strategies by the different agencies need considerable improvement. Like Michelle mentioned, there's a lot of parents that are invested in the process, but they either never hear of opportunities or find out late after the deadlines. And even though, again, my community has a considerable language barrier, but there's many bilingual individuals that they often find out late, and it was very striking to hear their utter frustration with how business as usual is being conducted.
Thank you. From our focus group, I think what stood out to me was parents expressing, specifically parents who've immigrated from either Dominican Republic or Cape Verde, just expressing the fact that physical activity, swimming classes, and were free in their country prior to them immigrating to the United States, and not understanding or thinking that that would be a barrier for their children or even themselves, and just mentioning like, yes, we have our local YMCA and Boys and Girls Club, but it's a huge cost, especially if you're right at that income level where you don't qualify for free or reduced costs. Really like hit home, because I have immigrant families and I've often been the navigator in like translating and helping people through their navigation through immigration. And it's a culture shock when you are used to growing your food, having chicken, and then you come to Pawtucket and you can't have chicken. And can't grow my own food, and I can't just go to the pool like I used to in my country. And it's like there's a desire for it, and there is just the built environment within which most of our immigrant populations reside, just don't have the capacity or the infrastructure for that. And it's not a lack of desire or want to be healthy, it's just literally not having access or the closest place not being accessible because of the transportation, which is another social determinant of health. So that really, I think about that quote all the time. So that really hit home from the focus groups.
Yeah, I think built environment is huge. You know, I grew up in Puerto Rico. I was born and raised there. Moved here when I was about 11 years old, and remembering kind of, you know, how neighborhoods were built and access to the outside. The beach was like a stone toss away, and then coming to kind of Providence and living in a city that's so restricted, and then the green spaces that are open for minorities and people of color are often like not safe, you know, for kids to really be kids and to be active. And I think what I truly loved about what was included in this was folks' lived experience, because oftentimes we focus so much on data and data and data, but lived experience is just data that hasn't been coded yet, you know? And I think it's our duty to really be able to uplift these stories and hear people for what they say. You know, sometimes we say, well, the data doesn't show that it's not that unsafe, and it's like, yeah, well, you're hearing 5 parents who just told you that it is unsafe. So perhaps your data is wrong. And why don't we look at what really they're saying? Because I think that is what's most important, is what people say, because they're the experts of their community.
Yeah, I think that grounding data in lived experience and stories really makes it even more powerful, right? And really can leverage both of those things, and really validates when those things do match, validates community members' experiences for what they've been going through, and then you can have the data to say, yes, this is exactly what I've been experiencing. So thank you guys for that. The next question is, how do we involve parents and community members in advocacy from the beginning? And do you have any suggestions or ideas on that?
Like I mentioned earlier, I think it's about improving the communication between the schools and the parents so that they can be more involved. Like Jesus made a great point with outreach. Getting the information late can be really frustrating. So how are you providing parents the opportunity to get involved? Making sure that they can be involved when these decisions are being made. And just providing education on how they can advocate. Progreso Latino has an advocacy group. We have the Adult Social Action Committee, where we have members of the communities. They gather at least once a month, and we'll talk about relevant policies or what's going on in the communities, and we'll provide education around housing, just a variety of policies and rights that they have. And that builds community, and it also provides them tools so that they themselves can be advocates for whatever they are passionate about. So just programs like that, and just really, really making sure you're doing great outreach so that the parents can be involved when they want to.
I really want to highlight also the importance of the health equity zones for including community members in exercises like this, because a lot of time in communities there's passionate sentiments around the stuff that is wrong, but usually in those meetings what is missing is the policy experts or the people who know how to address the root causes. And so I feel fortunate that I'm part of a health equity zone, because I've seen how with strategic partners like Dennis was highlighting, in rooms where people are full of passion, that transforms into like actionable steps towards a solution. So that's something that, I want to really highlight the HESES for that, because it's true that we are unique in that sense. Can you repeat the second part of the question? I think there's...
How do we involve them from the beginning?
Yeah, I think I addressed it. Yeah.
You got it.
Nothing else to that.
Yes, I'll definitely second the value of the health equity zones and being that intermediary between the community-based organizations, residents, and then making that information transparent up the chain to local and state policy advocacy partners, and allowing a space for multidisciplinary partners to convene. My favorite part about health equity zones is the technical assistance that we provide to our residents that is unmeasurable in performance evaluations and outcomes. I think it's underrated, the amount of technical assistance that we provide, and it's not just creating a meeting and expecting people to get there, is ensuring that your meeting is on a bus line, ensuring that your meeting has childcare services, ensuring that there's food at your meetings for the time being, and to incentivize residents for participation. Like, we're asking you for 2 hours of your lived experience, we need to pay you for that. And we need to support you financially to be able to get there. If it's an Uber gift card, what is it that we are gonna get, how are we gonna get you in the room? And being able to provide all of those accommodations has shown the amount of engagement that we have been able to have with our community. And providing language, I am all for language justice. We're place-based. Pawtucket and Central Falls, English, Spanish, Portuguese, Cape Verdean Creole is showed in the COVID response. We had a local call center with those 4 languages, and we took over 80,000 calls, where 50% of those calls were in Portuguese and Cape Verdean Creole and Spanish. So understanding that the places with the highest social vulnerability report that English is not their first language, and ensuring that we are really ensuring not only translation of documents, but interpretation. A lot of people who immigrate from here didn't go to school and can't read or write, so ensuring that we have information in different languages that we're interpreting and speaking versus only translating documents has really shown that those are like the secret sauces to getting people to the table.
Yeah, I think meeting people where they are, because I could hear folks saying, yeah, well, we open these opportunities all the time, and folks are just not interested, or they don't come. And we provide food, we do all these things, and we do all the things that you're talking about already, but we don't see the turnout, and it feels like we're wasting time. And I think to that is meeting folks where they are. What does that look like? Is it at drop-off and pickup? Is there a table, is it at parent-teacher conferences? Is it saying, hey, could we do parent-teacher conferences at a more centralized location? Because we'd also want to get some more information about some other things. Is it creating a school carnival? Is it working with the public school system that is also desperately in need, and say, how can we, help y'all do some parent engagement? Because it's so vital for parents to be a part of the conversation. And not hyper-focusing on parents that are, frankly, either too busy or have so many other things going on that they cannot be a part of that. And I think sometimes we hyper-focus on the folks that aren't involved, and then we forget about the parents that are so vocal and so loud, and we actually label them as burdensome. and we label them as being too much. And it's like, here you have someone who is so passionate and so involved, and you're seeing that as a negative, but you're focusing on the folks that just may not have the bandwidth to be a part of the conversation right now. So I think meeting people where they are is vital. We saw that in our participatory budgeting, like us at Pawtucket and Central Falls. Central Providence has been granted $1 million to be able to spend on some projects. And the way that we did it was a lot of the students, a lot of the people participating were high school students. And a lot of the other people were their parents. So what did we do? We set up shop in Mount Pleasant High School, and that is where the project delegate meetings were, because that was most accessible for the people that were participating in this plan. So really, instead of having folks be a part of our plan, have them be part of the foundation of the plan, because then people are more invested to continue in the conversation.
Great, thank you guys. And the last question that I have before we open it to the audience for more of a discussion, how can we shift the framing of health and weight and obesity to focus more on how they are shaped by families, social determinants of health, resources, barriers to healthy living?
So I think we need to take a multidimensional approach. We talk about the data over and over and over, and we have the data to prove that these are the causes, and it's not just because of the parent. There's all these factors that contribute to it. But also moving a bit away from numbers and telling the story, because you can show people the numbers, but to be able to see the story and get the quotes that we have and talk to the parents, you can look at it from a different angle, from an angle that's more compassionate and have more empathy if you're actually getting the qualitative data, not just quantitative data. Also, policy, shifting policies a bit, like including weight in some of the discrimination policies, having weight inclusive, something simple as weight inclusive furnitures, where students don't have to dread going in the classroom because, oh, I'm not gonna fit in this desk and they're gonna make fun of me, or this stall is too small, I don't wanna use the bathroom here. Just, it's like shifts little by little. The storytelling, we have the data, and shift away from parent blaming by telling these stories, because it's not on the parent. And we have the data, but we also have these stories that support the data.
I'm gonna echo a little bit of what Michelle said, but through a different route. It's the compassion aspect about it, but also, if you do a little bit of reading and if you participate in an exercise such as this, when you look at the data, with what appeals to you to motivate you towards change is more logical thinking. Once you see this data, and if you really understand it, it's very striking how blaming the parents is very ignorant. It's a very ignorant behavior that if you truly understand the data and what's out there, you will really see that it's not their fault that their children are experiencing what they're experiencing, because there's a lot of things outside their control that they're not able to change immediately. And so I guess that's something that I really want to highlight, that there's at least two roads to reach that ultimate outcome of not blaming the parents for the situation they're currently in.
Yeah, the same with the data. I have a public health background, so I've been researching disparities all my life, and it's kind of hard to shift the conversation when you're engaging with parents, and it is a cultural thing as well. I, particularly in my culture, they like women who are a little heavier, who have a solid bottom, and it's something that for example, I don't have any chronic conditions. I don't take any medications, but on my medical record, there is obesity there. But it is something that I'm mindful now because of the thought of prevention and understanding that with time, chronic diseases can develop, and it's your behaviors part of it is the personal behaviors that we make, but having that conversation with residents in a way that is digestible and not trying to take away the great culturally appropriate and healthy foods that we eat, and it's really about the education piece. A lot of the foods start off as being very healthy, and we kind of contaminate it with the added salt or the MSG or the sazon or the caldo de pollo or whatever it is that we use in our, but those are little things that we can talk about. How can we make our food more enjoyable and not, and like, what does healthy look, what is healthy? You know what I mean? Like in a culture that has so many different customs and belief in gastronomy that's specific to them. So it's really about not data shaming. That's the number one thing I try not to do. It is not your fault. We're here. These are the disparities, but we got here because there is a history of oppression in Providence County, and there are many historical factors that lead to in understanding the navigation for an immigrant and understanding how to navigate systems that they never have before. It contributes to what we're seeing today. So it's really having the conversation, understanding people's cultures before you approach the conversation, and using the trusted leaders like community health workers, like people who were born and raised to transmit that message in a way that is not going to make someone completely shut down and not even be involved anymore because you offended me because you don't even know that I don't have a chronic disease. Yes, I may look heavier than most, but I don't have. Why are you talking to me about blood pressure? Are you assuming that I have high blood pressure because of the way I look? So there are many different ways that you can be creative and unique in using the capacity that we have locally to transmit the message in a way that is digestible and can really co-create the experience and ensure that we're progressing and not moving backwards.
Yeah, heavy on the data shaming, right? Like, parents are being faced, and people in general are being faced with an impossible decision. I don't know if y'all, the last time y'all went to a supermarket, but it's really difficult. It's hard. It's like, do I get this or do I get 5 of this? You know, do I get this or, you know, and those are decisions that, that folks may not have to face. Maybe some folks in this room may not have to face that decision of what I have to put back from this cart in order to make ends meet. But that's the reality of the majority of the parents that are experiencing this. There's a family of 5, and I don't have the budget to make this healthy, quote unquote, decision for my family. I have to make sure that they're fed, right? In cultures, a lot of, you know, to echo the point said before, in culture, if you're too skinny, it's looked as you're not taken care of, right? A mother or a caregiver feels like they're not nourishing you sufficiently, so they're like, oh, like, vete a comer porque está bien flaco, you know what I mean? Like, go eat because you're a little skinny, you know? I don't know if you've been to a grandma's house, but, you know, as soon as you sit down, it's like the, vente, vamos a comer, ¿qué hace tu mamá? You know what I mean? Like, what's your mother doing? And it's this that sometimes isn't captured in the data, where we have to take into account that we are not meant to fit in the white American kind of data pool. Right? We're not meant to fit in the white standard of what health looks like. We are multi-dimensional people from so many different backgrounds, and ultimately we have to look at an interdisciplinary approach, right? What does health look like for this person and this family? I'm not even saying let's go by race and ethnicity. No, what does health look like for that family? Because they're their own experts, right? And I think that that's what's important, because sometimes we want to feel like the savior. I want to save these kids and I want to save this family. And it's like, no, let's build them up so they can make proper decisions that best fit their family and what that needs at that moment. Truly.
I just wanted to add, briefly connecting what Dennis said with something you mentioned earlier. That's precisely the risk of using data points of BMI and just BMI, because you're leaving equity factors out of the equation that are very important, that present the complete picture of a family that is experiencing these inequities. And I just wanted to connect that, make it full circle too.
Thank you. That's the perfect way to close and go into our Q&A. So thank you guys for being here and engaging, and again, always having passion with what you do and sharing. So we can have time for questions, right? Yeah, so thank you guys.